Hi, this is Emma. Welcome back to Griffith Family Farms. Today we're going to take a look at our bees. I just got in 2 new packages of bees to install in 2 new hives. And this is how they arrive in little boxes. And you can see for the most part, most of the bees are inside the boxes. A few hang on the outside. But they're really, really mellow at this part because they don't have any honey that they're protecting. So they really don't come after you at all. And so inside each of these packages is a little feeder on top. You can see that can holds the food for them while they're being transported. And there's 1 queen in a queen cage, and then about 500 worker bees in there. And so I'll install all of these into a new hive this afternoon and get them all set up to get started. Alright, so here we are on top of our rooftop of an apartment building right in the city. I have all my bees in the city. And so here's how you get a hive set up. There are different components to a hive. There is the lid, and inside the lid is a, it's called an inner lid, and I actually have 2 of them here. You can see the inner lid, and that a feeder can sit on top of to give sugar water to the bees when they need it, and helps with ventilation. And then you have the deeps, which have frames in them, but it all sits on top of, this is another deep, with a bottom and a frame to keep it up off of the ground to keep mice from climbing in it as easily, and ants and other bugs from going in there and stealing all of the honey. So we start with the basic bottom on there, and then we'll put the deep on top, and I'm going to take out 5 of the frames so that we have room to put the new bees in their hive. And you can see some of these frames have already been built out by the bees. And so the bees that I put in there now will even all of this out and make it perfect for their hive. All right, it looks good. All right. And then I have a few bee tools that I use. A bee brush, and that helps gently brush the bees off. If you're trying to inspect the frames, you can gently brush the bees off so you can see better. Or if you're done and wanting to go inside and you have a bunch of bees on you, you can gently brush them off with the brush. This is called a hive tool, and it is great for prying up the hives that are inside, the frames that are inside here, because sometimes they get really stuck in there with all of the beeswax and the propolis that the bees use to kind of fill any cracks in their hive. And so you can reach in and pry it up with the hive tool, or pry apart different frames. So that's really easy. Alright, so now comes the fun part of putting the bees in the hive. So I'm going to take one of my packages of bees, and they are really hot and thirsty after their long travel, so I just take a little spray bottle full of sugar water and lightly mist them down, and that gives them a little food, cools them off, and makes them a little friendlier when they come out. Okay. And then I have to pry up this jar, or this can that had their food in it. And you'll see when I do it, some of the bees will start to come out. And So inside of here, in her own little cage, is the queen bee. Sometimes she's hard to get out. So, the queen doesn't take care of herself. She doesn't feed herself or groom herself. All the worker bees do that for her. So, if you can see inside of this little cage is one bee all by herself, and that's the queen. So each hive has only one queen, and I'm going to put her in there. Right now there's a cork in the bottom of this, and I'm going to take out that cork and put a marshmallow in there. And so over the next week, the worker bees will eat away that marshmallow while they're feeding her through this screen. And by that time, they're used to her, and because they're very particular about their queens, so they've gotten to get used to her over the next week, and by the time that hole opens up, they've eaten their way through the marshmallow, they like her, she comes out and stays in the hive, and they don't kill her off. So I'll take that cork out and put the marshmallow in just a second. Alright, so I have my marshmallow. And you want to be careful when you pull the cork out that the queen doesn't come out too, because then you've lost your queen and you won't have a hive that survives. Right. So I have the cork out, and I'm just going to stick this marshmallow in this hole. It's really hard with these big thick gloves on. So make sure she's still in there. Yep, she's in there with the little marshmallow on the end. And so I will take her and just put her in the middle of the hive here. And I just kind of push her down onto the hive in the wax that's already there. That way the bees can get to the marshmallow and eat that, and they can still get to her through the screen to feed her for the next week. And yet I tip it down a little bit in case a worker bee dies, it doesn't fall in there and block the hole so the queen can't get out. So now she's all set in there. And I'm just gonna put her back in that little hive. Put one more frame in here. And I set her in the middle of the hive, and she'll work her way out as she lays eggs. So now I'm going to give the bees one last little spray of sugar water. And then I'm going to dump them in there. And I'm going to shake pretty hard. They don't mind that shaking. It'll get them out and in there. And most of them will fall down into the hive, and the rest will all fly all around. If you can see in there, there are a ton of bees in there now. And I'm going to carefully put 4 of the remaining frames in here, giving a little room for that queen. And it gives them a little extra room to settle in. Because usually my frames have 10 frames, my hives have 10 frames in them. So now, I'll take my brush and gently kind of brush them off of this edge. kind of slide it across to push the bees out of the way as I'm going so that I don't squish very many of them. And then I will take another deep that's just empty. It doesn't have any frames in it for this beginning part. And I'll just gently put it on top. Again, trying not to hurt any of the bees. And the reason I put this empty deep on top is I'm going to put their sugar water to feed them inside of here. So I have these big jars of sugar water, and it has, the lid of it has little holes in it where the sugar water can come out. And so I turn it upside down in their hive, and the bees can eat through their holes. I just have to make sure it's lined up so they can get to it. And then the final step is closing up the hive. So I put the lid on top. And this is called an entrance reducer. And it keeps the entrance down here that the bees come in and out of. This makes it a little smaller so that the bees don't have to protect as large of a space from wasps or other bee colonies coming in and attacking them. And I just keep it on for a little while until they get established with their hive. And that's all there is to it. So the bees can now come in and out through a smaller opening here for the next week until I remove that. And so all of the bees that are flying around now will find their way to that entrance, and by nighttime they will all go back in there. So the bees can fly up to a 5-mile radius to collect their pollen and nectar. And pollen and nectar come from the flowers and trees in the neighborhood. So there are 3 types of bees in a hive. One is the queen, and there's only 1 queen per hive, and her role is simply to lay eggs to make more worker bees. The second type of bee are the worker bees, and those are all females. No male worker bees. So the worker bees have a lot of different jobs. They tend to the queen, keeping her happy and well fed and healthy. They, as you can see them flying around me right now, they fly from the hive out to go collect all of the food that they'll need, food and water for the hive. They take care of the queen's babies, so when the queen lays an egg in each cell, each one of those turns into a little baby bee. And so the worker bees nurse those babies from the time they're an egg until they're old enough to go off and work themselves. All right, and the third type of bee is a drone. Those are the male bees. Their only job is to replace a queen, fertilize a queen if the queen that's in the hive currently has died. The worker bees then go to the eggs that the queen had laid before, and they put something on it called royal jelly that they secrete from a gland in them, and they put that royal jelly on an egg, and it then develops, instead of into a worker bee, it develops into a queen bee. She will then fly out of the hive up into the air and to look for a drone to fertilize her.